All right, picking up where we left off in part one of chapter 22, we left off with catastrophism, which, as you can read, catastrophism is the result of change occurring because of a sudden drastic event that happened, and the influence that may have had on not only our planet, but also how that change affected life in that area as well. Back to our strata, the layers of rock in Earth. When examining each strata, geologists, or people who study the planet, they can determine what may have caused drastic changes, such as a massive flood or a volcanic eruption, and how that may have led to certain mass extinctions of some species. Now, keep in mind that fossils found in deeper layers of strata are not necessarily found in more recent ones, indicating that an extinction did occur. So, with that in mind, if there's a fossil right here, there very well could be a fossil in a different layer of strata right above it, right there. So what may have led to fossils being found on top of fossils? Well, after a certain catastrophe happened, the environment here changed, and new life that was better suited for the new environment was able to survive there until something else happened or something else changed in that particular environment. Ultimately, how this would have went down is an extinction event would have occurred, or the environment would have changed, one or the other, and individuals could have immigrated to this particular new environment and repopulated it, particularly those species that are well suited for the new environment that would exist, whether that be a result of a catastrophe or just a change in the environment slowly over the course of time. Now, with this repopulation and immigration in that new environment, we would also need to consider the adjustment in the resources there for the living things, both the type of resource as well as the quantity of that resource. Hutton. Hutton was a big fan of the geologic theory of gradualism, which is essentially saying that our Earth does change, keeping in mind that people believe that it didn't. I don't know if I mentioned that. People also, going back to the first video, people also believe that our planet doesn't change, and the planet that they saw at their particular time was exactly how it would have been seen as long as Earth has been around. Meaning that, according to people in the 1700s, this rock formation looked just like that since Earth's inception, which we know now that this is a result of weathering or beating down on a rock, whether that be by rain or wind or snow or ice or blowing sand. Weathering caused this shape. Hutton believed that this was a result of gradualism, and that the same processes that break this down continue to do so slowly and slowly and slowly over the course of many, many, many years, and we end up seeing the landforms that we have in front of us today. One example that you're pretty keen on would be the Grand Canyon, which we know is carved out by the Colorado River. Well, according to people 200-300 years ago, that canyon never changed, and it's just always looked like that. And we do measurements now, and we know that it's getting deeper every single year. Lyell. Charles Lyell suggested the notion of uniformitarianism, which is an extension of gradualism. He worked very closely with Hutton. They were both geologists. And he suggested that the things that changed our planet many, many, many years ago are the exact same processes that continue to influence the shape of our planet today. In other words, we have things on our planet such as volcanic eruptions that build new islands, such as the Hawaiian Islands, and according to Lyell, those same processes of volcanic eruptions leading to new islands and new inhabitable places occurred millions of years ago too. The processes are uniform, they're unchanged, they're the same, and they take a long time. So, how do the processes of catastrophism, gradualism, and uniformitarianism compare to the prior beliefs before the acceptance of natural selection? And how could these processes have influenced Darwin's ideas of natural selection? That's what I want you to think about. The next guy we're going to talk about is Lamarck, who was a predecessor, came before Charles Darwin, who was one of the only people who actually proposed ideas of how life actually evolved. Keep in mind, people we spoke about before Lamarck were just talking about how the Earth changed, or they grouped things together, but Lamarck actually suggested this is how life changes. And a lot of his stuff is decent thought for his time era, but they're entirely wrong, and that's actually what Lamarck is known for today, is how incredibly off his thoughts were. Lamarck's two big ideas that we're going to be talking about here are the idea of use and disuse, and inheritance of acquired traits. We're going to be elaborating on these in the next few slides. You're going to want to be sure you can explain both of those. This image right here is a great illustration of his hypothesis of use and disuse. Essentially, you can think of use and disuse as the common saying, use it or lose it, because that's what it is. According to Lamarck, living things such as this crab could choose to use certain things that they have on their body, like this claw, and as a result of using this claw, the claw is going to get huge, and then this crab could give this large claw to all of his offspring, which seems like it could be all right, but what we have to consider is that in order for this guy to pass traits on to his offspring, those traits have to be heritable, meaning that they have to be locked into the DNA. And this claw size isn't something that he had in his DNA. He had to work at to get it. Which leads us to our next thought, which is his inheritance of acquired traits, which is kind of this one as well. And the inheritance of acquired traits is talking about, okay, you work at something, you get it, you can pass that on to your child, such as Hulk Hogan here. Hulk Hogan acquired those muscles by working out in the gym, spending a lot of time. According to Lamarck, his child, and this is really his son, would inherit those muscles that Hulk Hogan acquired by physically, so to speak, earning those muscles. And as we can look at in this picture here, his son is nowhere even close to being like this. Moving on, we're going to be looking at Charles Darwin and his voyage and his notion of descent with modification. So a little bit of a background about Charles Darwin. Darwin was a naturalist by heart, but his dad forced him into med school. Lucky for him. Charles found medicine to be rather boring and was not cool with surgery in these days. Mid-1800s. Keep in mind there was no anesthesia at this time, so I can imagine all the bloody screams he was hearing while he was going through med school. As a result, he quit med school and became a clergyman underneath a botany professor named John Henslow, a name I won't expect you to remember, who later recommended him to a captain of the HMS Beagle, which is the ship Darwin ended up sailing around the world on. And his role was a survey crew member aboard that ship. They were surveymen. They were going to investigate uncharted or relatively unknown lands and waters. And one of the places they explored was around the South America coastline. This was in the 1830s. I'm sure you've probably heard the connection between Darwin and the Galapagos Islands, and those islands were included in the exploration. Darwin would spend much of his time on this travel. You can imagine all the time he had on the boat, investigating, documenting life along the coast. He would actually get out of the boat and walk along the shores while The rest of the crew would be on the boat and doing a lot of the coastal investigation, so to speak, from the water. As he was moving about the land, Darwin took close and careful note, drawings and everything, and even collected specimens of plants and animals. And one of the things he kept commenting on in his writing was how perfectly suited that all the plants and all the animals seemed to be for their environment. Now keep in mind that the environment, in an environment we're including weather, the amount of water available, as well as the amount of other resources, similar to what we talked about with those camels earlier on. Darwin also noted that the fossils he stumbled across very closely resembled the plants and animals that he was seeing alive in that particular area. But also you got to keep in mind that the animals he was seeing are unique to that specific area, so they're animals that he wasn't familiar with. And while he was looking at those fossils, similar to what we were talking about previously, the fossils had a strong resemblance to the living things, but they weren't the same as the living things, leading him to think about that, well, maybe they were ancestors, and today's current life were descendants upon those ancestors with some modifications. Putting into words some of the things that we just talked about here, once again, he took note of the adaptations, which were inherited characteristics, keyword inherited, that increased an organism's chance at survival. So he took note of adaptations that made organisms so well fit for their environment, and also noted geographic locations, a new one we didn't talk about, of similar environments, and how similar environments contained similar forms of life. Now we're very keen on the desert because we live in one, but what what Darwin was seeing is that if he wandered in the Sonoran Desert here in Arizona, he would see life forms, and if he went to any other desert in the world, he would see not necessarily the exact same life forms, but the same type of life forms. So all life forms in one desert or one type of environment would be very, very closely similar to the other life forms in other deserts as well.